You know how in school, at the start of every chapter, there's always that one line, learning objective or what you're learning this unit. Let's be honest, almost nobody actually read that. I didn't either. I just skip right past it and go, man, okay, let's just solve the problems. But here's the thing, that one sentence is actually really important because in that one line, you can already see why you're learning the topic and what kind of mindset you should have while learning it. Let's say you're learning about functions in math and the objective says, understand the concept of a function. Now, when you hit a wall while solving problems, you can go back and think, wait, maybe this isn't just about getting the answer. It's about understanding how functions behave, what they're really doing. And just like that, your whole study approach changes. It's the same with music. If you just see sheet music as a bunch of notes on a page, you're missing the real point. But when you stop and ask, what is the composer trying to say here? Everything starts to shift. The parts you thought you understood feel different, and the things you never noticed before, suddenly they start to come alive. From the very beginning, the composer already decided how this piece should flow, what kind of emotion it should carry, and they wrote all of that into the sheet music. But if we just memorize the notes, thinking, as long as I play it without mistakes, I'm good, we start to miss the point. And the more we ignore the intention behind the music, the harder the piece starts to feel, until eventually we hit that wall and go, why is this so difficult? So in today's video, I'm going to show you 2 key ways to understand what the composer wanted and how to actually spot that in the sheet music. Once you start doing that, even the most difficult pieces become more enjoyable. And once it's enjoyable, it starts to feel easier too. First, let's talk about separating. One big reason we feel overwhelmed when looking at sheet music is because all the information hits us at once. The notes, the rhythm, the harmony, the left hand, the right hand. It's like having a fully assembled, super complex robot suddenly dropped in front of you. When that happens, there's really only one thing to do. Separate it and look at it slowly. And I don't just mean practice the right hand and left hand separately. I'm talking about breaking it down into the 3 core elements of music: melody, rhythm, and harmony. It's just like taking a robot apart, separating the arms, legs, and head so you can actually see how each part works. I'll show you exactly how to do this, with examples from simple pieces all the way to advanced ones. Let's take a piece a lot of us play, A Maiden's Prayer. If you look at the melody first, here it is, right? Right hand, B flat to E flat to G, B flat to E flat to G, that's the melody. But because it's written in octaves, people often just start playing the octave right away. Instead of looking at the octaves first, you should identify the melody notes first. Once you know, oh, the melody is B flat, E flat G, B flat, E flat G. Then you'll realize, okay, so I just need to play that in octaves. Now, for the left hand, it's grouped into chords. Here we have an E flat chord. If you're wondering, wait, what exactly is that chord? I have a separate video all about harmony and chords, so you can check that out later. For now, it's enough to just recognize, okay, that's the chord there. So here we've got E flat, G, B flat. These 2 notes move here and you play them together like this. When you understand that, you can look at it once and immediately play it just like this. So we just looked at an easy piece as an example. Now let's move on to something a little more challenging. Here's a piece a lot of people play like this, and it's one of my absolute favorites. Difficult, yes, but such a fascinating piece. Kapustin. Most people will just play it note for note like this. 파시, 도시, 레시, 미, 파시. But let's listen to the original recording for a second. It's completely different, right? Like you almost think, wait, is this even the same piece? If you only focus on playing the written notes, you won't get the actual feel of the piece. For example, in the original, the intended melody is... That's the line you need to bring out. Listening to the original and identifying the melody is incredibly helpful, especially for modern pieces because the notation can be very dense and tricky. Here the left hand is so soft it's almost invisible. The focus is the melody. And if you accidentally let your thumb get too heavy, you'll lose that balance. So you really have to identify the melody first. It might go like long note. And the rest is just background, barely touched. You've got to have that in your head from the start. If you say, I'll figure it out later, you're setting yourself up for bad habits. And in piano, just like any instrument, Bad habits are the hardest thing to fix once they set in. That's why you should analyze the melody right from the beginning. Okay, so basically, you want to practice by separating things the way the composer intended. Now let's take it up a notch with something even more difficult. Prokofiev's Piano Concerto. Whoa, what is this? This score has 3 staves. That's right. 3 separate lines of notation. In cases like this, the person who prepared the score has already done a good job separating the parts for you. For example, you'll see the melody here, and then you might wonder, wait, how am I supposed to play this? That's where you see markings like MS and MD, meaning you swap the melody between your right hand and left hand. So you might play it like, then move up here, and then like this. It's already split into parts for you. That's how important separation is. Important enough that they actually wrote it into the score. When you start noticing things like this, you'll begin to see the sheet music in a more 3-dimensional way. And what once looked like a messy cluster of notes will start to reveal a meaningful structure. Music is often called the art of time, because once you play it, it disappears. On the other hand, visual art is the art of space. You place a painting or a sculpture in a space, and you can walk around it, look at it, and experience it in that physical space. So, music is different. It's about how things happen over time, how the same melody, rhythm, or harmony gets repeated, varied, and transformed. When you start to notice that flow, you begin to hear what the composer is really saying. But if you miss that flow, the score can just look like a pile of random notes. Recognizing the repetitions and transformations, though, suddenly makes the music much easier to understand and much more meaningful. Now, let's go back to the piece we looked at earlier, and I'll explain using that example. Remember how I mentioned the octaves? Well, the melody works the same way. Here, for instance, the melody is, but it keeps getting repeated in octaves. If you look closely at the score, you'll see this kind of repetition happening again and again. There are patterns everywhere. It's impossible for them not to be there, and it doesn't stop there. These same kinds of repetitions appear again in later sections of the piece too. Even within the same work, the melody itself keeps coming back. And what about sonata form? It's basically an ABA structure. Let me explain. A sonata was a genre that became really popular during the classical period. Just like how a lullaby is music for children, a sonata is a type of instrumental music, a genre written specifically for instruments. Back in the day, it was the trend. Sonatas were everywhere. Now, the form itself is built around an A section, and that A section is repeated. So if it's important enough to repeat in the structure itself, that should tell us just how essential it is. That's why, when you recognize these repeating patterns, you start to really understand how the form works. Now, let's take a look at another Kapustin piece. If you look closely here, you'll notice the same kind of patterns showing up again and again. For example, this section is meant to be played very softly. Then here, the notes are held longer. Then another little melody line appears, and again, until suddenly the real melody comes in. This cycle keeps repeating. In fact, you could say the entire structure of this piece is basically built on these repeating patterns. And once you recognize that, it doesn't really matter how long or difficult the piece looks. It immediately becomes much easier to understand. So if you've ever looked at a score and thought, wow, why is this so hard? It may not be because of your lack of skill. Often it's simply because you weren't trained to read what the composer was really trying to say. That's why, just like we talked about today, when you separate the layers and start spotting the patterns, you begin to see the hidden message the composer left in the music. Before you worry about memorizing notes, ask yourself, what is this music actually trying to say? When you start from that perspective, the score no longer feels like a wall of notes. It begins to read like a language, something alive, something you can understand. And that's the real skill, not just reading notes, but understanding music on a deeper level. So I encourage you, take out that score you've been struggling with, separate it, look for the patterns and take another look. I promise, you might start to see it in a completely different way.